we're going to be looking at part of the grand finals of Clem versus Reynor, and also part of like the winners finals, because there's so many games that are good, but I only need a couple to really emphasize what I'm going for. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised. I was looking to see if someone already did like a Reynor like kind of like style review or something. Like he's done this like lurker style in ZvT for so long, but no one really talks about it. Like everyone knows he does it, but I haven't really seen anyone do like a proper in-depth analysis of it. So I feel like I'm hitting uncharted territory, which is weird because it like someone must have done this. I just haven't seen it or something. But I think the problem that I'm seeing with a lot of people who are looking at this replay pack is everyone's looking at it like straight off the press, and then they're like kind of like trying to figure it out as they're looking through it. Fuck that shit. Like, who wants to watch someone learn in real time? No one actually cares. I already looked at these replays and I know exactly what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna be like, why did he do that? I'm gonna already have a planned out opinion on what's happening in these games. I'm not gonna like script every single minute or something, but I know exactly what's going on, and I think that's like the main. Like, everyone's just so lazy. They're all just like looking through these replays like straight up, and they just don't know what's going on. Which, you know, if they just want to do that for their own personal thing, that's cool. But for learning, we're gonna do it right. We're gonna get into it raw. Just like pump through, because there's some interesting things about Reynor that no one else does, and I kind of love Reynor's style. Honestly, Reynor has a cool style. Alright. Wait, does my sound good? I need my sound to be a little higher, because I don't want to play music or anything. I just want it to be good on its own. Does that sound good? Let me know if it sounds too loud. I need to actually know. Okay. Now, the thing about Reynor that everyone thinks of right off the bat is that he goes lurkers. But no one really knows why he goes lurkers. My ears. But there's very specific reasons I see him go lurkers, and I feel like what it comes down to at the end of the day is that he's kind of tricky, and he kind of wants to hide information for as long as possible. He does this like with lurkers, with roaches, just going like straight bling bling. But that's like more of like the mix up of the other two. I've even seen him go mutas, and I think the characteristic that's different about Reynor versus every other player in ZvT is that he waits till the last second, the last possible second, to show that he's doing what he's doing. And there's just little tiny things that he does like that I think make Reynor way better than everybody else at ZvT right now. He is nuts at ZvT. I don't know if he's the best, but he's really good at it. A cool little thing to note is he waits till the Reaper comes in the nab before he attacks the SCV at the third. That's like a little micro thing. Like, it's really, really difficult as a Terran to like micro the Reaper and attack the drone with the SCV and make sure everything's situated at home. This is another little thing. Unfortunately, Clem is very good, and he ended up letting the SCV live with just like 5 health. But still, little stuff like that's good. Little notes. Actually, I'm gonna make it sound a little quieter. There we go. Little tiny things that make a big difference, for sure. Now, it's interesting because Cyril's been so good for so long. I think the framework for what Zerg should be has been aggression, or actually the opposite, defensive play, using advantages to get more ahead defensively over and over and over again, which is obviously like the most popular way to play Zerg. Like, historically, it's just always been good to do that. But Reynor, for the first time in a long time, actually uses aggressive means to get ahead and uses opportunities that most people won't. Getting the 430 scout. Pretty good scout timing. Always checks at around 4 minutes what's going on. And he's not like super tight on these timings. Like he kind of does weird things with his upgrades. He kind of limps on upgrades and stuff like that. Like I almost never see him get 1-1 back to back, like on time synced. I don't know why he doesn't do it consistently, but he just doesn't. He just kind of, I think he's just focused on different things, and housekeeping just isn't important to him as much as getting lings around the map, positioning his queens in the right places. Like he's doing all these little things. He's much more worried about his spore positioning than his lair timing, which I think is another interesting characteristic of Reynor, which I'm kind of afraid about, because everyone who copies like the best player will copy everything the best player does, for better or worse, and this could very well be a bad habit that people get without actually getting the advantage of you know, Reynor's ling positioning, queen positioning, and all that stuff. But notice how, let's actually back up real quick. Notice how he takes the fourth ridiculously fast, 5 minutes and 20 seconds. I mean, it's not greedy. He's just that on top of his timings. But he sees the 6 Hellions, and he moves his lings out immediately. Not only that, but now he's moving his queens back to the third, because he's covering for any run bys, because that's now his biggest problem with these lings out on the map. And he's making 12 more. And he's rallying into the third base. The only possible threat that these Hellions can make, because if they cut way up here, like there's no way they're gonna get up this ramp. Queens are gonna cover it every day of the week. But not only does he see that these Hellions are out of position, but he sees that there's 6 Hellions, which is huge, because if he had like 2 or 4, it actually wouldn't be possible to do that much damage, because they have so many Marines at home. But in reality, just because he has 6, he delayed his barracks by so much, and he delayed his medevac production. So he doesn't even have a medevac on the way. These are just lings on their own. And it actually is a great example of Reynor taking advantages through like scouting and making these, getting ahead through sniping like Marines like this. This is practically, what, 8, 9, 10 Marines for free, and then he just backs off. Sure, he lost like half the lings, but these lings mean nothing compared to his 10 Marines. 10 Marines for 10 lings is nothing. 16 lings for 10 Marines is nothing. At the timing of 6 minutes, where normally you'd be pumping these medevacs out, trying to do a big timing, now it's like totally messed up. And it's all just because he was paying attention. And he was keeping track of where the Hellions are and how many Hellions there are and stuff like that. Like, you really don't see this a lot consistently, but this is like what makes Reynor Reynor. Getting little baneling drops. There's another thing he kind of adds on to just about every single game. I think that it's like one of those things every Zerg knows is good, and no one will ever tell you it's bad, but everyone just kind of forgets. And Reynor's actually really good about getting those baneling drops in. So Clem, for the most part, has had to slow play these Widowmines and Hellions as he's waiting for his medevacs, because he really doesn't have a great push here. These Marines are a lot less. This is 2/3 of the Marines he should have, just because of that counter. And even now, while Reynor's defending, he's doing the baneling drops, looking for damage, kind of zoning with the queens, and then when he needs to, he'll attack. Just waiting till last, absolutely last second. And only now does Clem actually know that there's Hydras. he's seen these hydrants, and I think he also dropped here. Yeah, he did. And he's, oh, actually no, he hasn't. He's just preparing. But now he knows that there's hydras, and it's 8 minutes and 30 seconds of the game. Problem is for Clem, is he's been running double factory, reactor double factory this whole time, or he has a reactor factory, and he's getting a second factory just now with the tech lab. Of course, intending to get Widowmine burrow speed, but it's kind of too late to go tanks. And this is a great example of like a position Reynor will put people in, because most people will get hydras actually very quickly. They would have had hydras by now, most people. But he waits until 8:30 and then starts showing what he's got. But by then, it's too late. Clem's already decided what he's gonna do, and it's not really possible to go full into tanks. He could add some tanks here, but it's not really possible to really be effective with a bunch of tanks. So he's gonna go into more widow mines, and he's gonna get into drilling claws, despite knowing that it's hydras. And he's gonna take another base, because Clem's biggest move that he can make is attack from 2 places at once, preferably on different sides of the map, and he's gonna expand. Because there's no way to actually get a good siege tank push going at this point. It's way too late. If he was going to do it, he had to already do it earlier. So he's essentially, at 9 minutes in the game, deciding we're going to go really late into the game. We're going to go late game. And this is great for Reynor, because he's going lurkers. And he knows how to play lurkers really well. He's an absolute expert at playing lurkers. And it just comes down to who's the better player at that point, which is honestly the best thing you could ever expect. Best thing you could ever ask for in a ZvT match. Just cleaning everything up. And Clem's done really well at 9 bases. He's controlling so much space on the left and right. Honestly, both these players played so well. So many people ask me, like, what do you think about Reynor versus Cyril? What about Reynor versus, I don't know, Trap? I think someone else asked me about that. But to me, the thing that I noticed the most was Reynor versus Clem. Like, by far the best games were Reynor versus Clem. Because Reynor is playing this, like, such a, like a Reynor specific style, like no one else does this. And Clem just has to deal with it. You can kind of see throughout these games him slowly learning how to deal with it, which I think is really cool too, because you don't really get to see someone learn what's going on. Well, I don't think it's necessarily the first time he's played a Reynor, but I think you can see him cutting different things and like kind of leaning on different strategies more and more throughout the series. I think that's a really cool evolution. And I think this was the first game of the grand finals, and he was just going straight for widow mines, which I think in Clem's specific scenario, he was totally fine with going to the late game, just because he is confident in that spot. But I know a lot of Terran players who would not be happy about being in a late game with a Reynor. This is an absolute trap to be in a late game situation with a Reynor. And the tactics, I'm not going to focus too much on the tactics. He does a lot of Ling Run buys. He's been doing a lot of Bailey drops in the natural. It doesn't really matter too much. They do damage. They are impactful. But the main meat of it is these lurkers, how he hides information, and kind of how he positions himself into the early mid game to set himself up for the later mid to then late game. I think that is like way more defining of how Reynor plays than you know, every single run by and bailing drop he does, which is also a package to what he does for sure. But I think if you are looking at Reynor and you're trying to do what a Reynor does, you might get the wrong idea that it's all about run bys and, you know, you just go lurkers and run by and that's it. It's a lot more than that, honestly. Something to note too getting the +2, or getting rather +1 missile after +2 melee. He's got +2/+2 on his lings and banelings. Doesn't always get this. He actually sometimes will skip +2 melee and get +1 missile. I think that's a really important thing to look for, because you're gonna see an earlier missile than most people would think for lurkers. And reynor rallying into this fight nonstop. If this was anybody else, I think they would die terribly, but somehow reynor actually made that fight last like 20 more seconds. Now he just has to defend. And from here, everything's set up for him. He just has to defend this base. This is his biggest problem, and you can see him kind of leaning on this base with his lings. You'll see this a lot where he'll have two different hotkeys, and one being his main hotkey with his lurkers, Hydra, Bane, whatever, and then his secondary for whatever his most vulnerable base is. In this case, it's the, what is this, the 6th base. Sometimes it's the Nat, sometimes it's even the 3rd. But the point is, it's like somewhere opposite of where the main army is. And he's just setting up for this double. The ideal is having double lurker siege on both sides of the map. Because it's such a weak base, he evacs, immediately counterattacks with his lurkers and vipers. Actually, like, super strong if you can get in the production, but I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of that, because Clem rallies into his production, or into his main base, a lot. So reynor doesn't really go for it that much in this series, or even the whole tournament, actually. He actually respects Clem a ton when it comes to stuff like that, because Clem's good for it. He does things on point, and honestly, this tournament in particular, he just kills it. And stuff like this looks really bad until you see the natural's practically gone. Third base is still getting harassed by 2 lurkers, and you kind of realize everything's gonna work out. I mean, he just kind of trades out with a little bit more than Clem every single time. And this is the strategy that Clem had. He wanted to go for the split map, mass bases, and he got him. He got tons of bases. He denied reynor of his bases for the longest time. Just earlier I was talking about how good Clem was at dealing with the 5th base and denying it for so long. The 5th and the 6th, because they were both going down simultaneously. But in the end, reynor just kind of edged out. And honestly, these lurkers made a huge difference. These actually did contribute a lot. Because if you think about it, think about the comp Clem went for. Widowmine, Marine Marauder, Medevac versus lurkers. Clem's best chance to get in this game is to split up his army, attack this base, and set up tons of economy. You know, he did the best strategy he could with the cards he got. He decided to go for the mass expand, and it was just too hard. And he didn't really have a choice, to be honest. I say he chose to go mass expansion with the Widowmines and drop around. It was really the only thing he could have done. Just because of how reynor waited. And then the game pretty much ends from here. Takes great fights here. He's also winning here, winning 2 fights simultaneously. That's a good sign that we're kind of screwed this game. Bang, thanks for the raid, I appreciate it. We're doing analysis of, who is this, reynor versus Clem. I keep wanting to say Cyril, because I'm so used to Cyril being the best at something. But reynor actually comes up with some great stuff this tournament. It's not even new stuff. It's just stuff that I feel like isn't really talked about that much. The focus that I'm trying to get across from these reynor replays is just how different he plays the game, or at least ZvT, how different he plays ZvT and how information focused he is. I think a lot of people who play ZvT are very honest, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I think while that's like it's super standard, super solid, of course it's been around for a long time, I think reynor bring something to the table that's just a little bit different that can be added to everyone's game. Because he doesn't tech super hard. His emphasis isn't on the tech. He defends with Ling Bling for so long, and then all of a sudden lurkers come out. Or all of a sudden there's this hiders. Or he's been rushing to pit the whole time. And from the Terran's perspective, it's ridiculously hard to know which one it is. It's so hard to know. Because from their perspective, they're just like, oh, I'm playing versus another Ling Bling comp. I guess it's going to be Ling Bling. And they have to make a decision, Widow Mines or tanks. And it's tough because a lot of times Widow Mines actually isn't the middle ground you'd think. And more as we go through this series, you'll see Clem lean more and more on the tanks because they're actually pretty neutral. If you end up with tanks versus a bunch of roaches or something like that, great. If you end up with tanks versus Ling Bling, that's fine. We'll just find some good siege spots. It'll work out. If you find yourself with Widow Mines versus roaches, you're dead. You gotta drop everywhere and just keep them from attacking you for as long as possible. And of course, Widow Mines versus Ling Bling. Oh, that's good. Let's do more of that. This is great. We can play completely how we normally would and suffer no repercussions. This game, SCV goes deep, completely misses the drone. Unfortunate for Clem. Stuff like that can happen. If you see an opportunity to take it, he was going for the Clash build, so he skipped speed for this, which is totally worth it if you know that someone likes sticking their SCV around and they're in the wrong spot at the wrong time. You gotta take it every time. And Reynor plays versus Reapers pretty well. I very rarely see him lose a tumor. I've heard him talk about how you just have to accept when you lose a tumor versus Clem and how it just always happens. But it actually doesn't happen that often. He's actually pretty good about dealing with these little Hellions, because Clem will run by 2 Hellions. And Reynor just skirts around so well every time. And we got a little Overlord kill. Wait, hold on. He did see that he's going for Lib. He knows exactly what's going on. 4 minutes every game. Actually, a little bit before. 4 minutes every game. Get the Overlord check. And he actually sees Viking. Ooh, that's actually really nice. 4 minutes is like the absolute last time to scout Terran. There are times where you check it like 3. If you really, really want to know if they're going 3cc and you want to do something tricky. But 4 minutes is the absolute standard by the book time that you can do. And I think it's really good. And you'll see Reynor do that with Lings, Overlords. He'll even get OB speed sometimes. He just always employs different ways to scout, which is kind of like the mark of a good player, right? They don't scout one way, they scout many, many different ways, and they're good at doing all of them. It's not necessarily something you have to do, but you can kind of see how they all work. Now, Clem actually gets way more Hellions than I think Reynor expected. He saw the Viking, he was prepared for Libs, as you can see with the score spots, but he did not expect the Hellions. And he damage controls pretty well. He's getting 8 drones, 9 drones, go down to 10 drones lost. But actually, all things considered, not that bad. It is what it is. Luckily for him, he's got 2 spores or 2 tumors in every spot that needs to, and just 1 down here, which actually is being sped right now. These are the middle and this upper lip, especially though, are very, very important. And the fact that he got those down before these queens went back is huge, because the worst part about Hellion run bys isn't just the fact you lose 10 drones, but the fact that if you don't have your tumors down, or if they just died just before the run by started, you're going to be in big trouble, because they're making medevacs right now and they're ready to go. Even though it is delayed compared to, 2 Hellion, 4 Hellion, 6 Hellion into medevac timing. If you take enough damage and you don't get the creep on time, then you're actually just worse off for it, because the drones make up for their timing being less and you just have no creep. So this is super well done, all things considered, by Clem and Reynor. Mostly Reynor, because that's who we're going to focus on. We got to be super biased. Now, Reynor was leaning super hard on the top. I kind of want to talk about that. Super hard on the top side, got lings everywhere. You can't really patrol overlords like you normally would want to, because Clem's specifically checking for that with the Viking, specifically controlling this spot because it's such an important spot to push down. This alleyway is super good. Also, having this high ground established where normally you're just stuck down the choke is super good for Terran. And you can see like stuff like siege tanks up here and Marines getting over there. So he's leaning super hard on this top base just because even though he did have some tumors up there, he needs more defense to kind of make this actually safe, because he's not quite connected yet. He's trying to get before the 4th. That's what you really want, is creep in front of your base, but he needs units there to defend the creep right away. And he's got lings coming up here, but he kind of sees a little medevac drop going down the bottom. So he had all the right reasons to lean towards the top. It's the most important place for him to focus on. It just ended up being wrong, which is fine. Gun's going for the middle. He's making sure he's got control of the middle and in the bottom side, and he just leaves. It's totally fine. There's a lot of games where Reynor's upgrades are a little bit later than most Zergs, and this game is no exception. Because, well, unfortunately for him, it was because of the run by. But this game, it's really going to be late, and he's going to have to deal with things in an especially efficient way just to make up for that. And Clem's no stranger to Golden Wall. If you've played Golden Wall a lot, you know about these tricks. Dropping out of the minerals. Fortunately for Reynor, he is making hydras right now, and they all just popped. You got a little squad on the top, a little squad at the bottom, because he knows exactly where his biggest weaknesses are, the most outer bases on the map. This is true for literally every map, and literally every base setup. Even if you have a triangle, there's always going to be a stray base. You know, terrain in this case happens to be a huge factor, because this tank is completely safe versus Ling Bling, and he's going to need to get queens or hydras or whatever. But the same rules apply completely. And he's actually really on top of these medevac drops throughout the entire series. And you can see Clem once again not really knowing what's going on, because he doesn't really know. Until just now he saw hydras. Now he knows, shit, I need to get more tanks. Oh no. And then I gotta make a second tech lab. He was gonna go mines up until that point, because he didn't know. He had no idea what was going on, because he's been playing pure Ling Bling this whole time. As far as he's concerned, this was a Ling Bling comp up until now. And he's actually getting the melee and the missile, not the armor. Did he finish that? That's actually interesting. I don't know how he prioritizes his missile. That's like the one thing I didn't figure out, was why he chooses missile over +2. It makes not a lot of sense to me, but I haven't done the numbers. Maybe someone knows exactly how many shots a lurker takes to kill a marauder or not a medevac, a tank. And there's maybe like 1 or 2 less volleys or something like that. I don't know. I see him abducting a lot of tanks. So I'm thinking that might have something to do with it. But I don't think it will make any difference to Marines, as far as I know. So maybe someone's seen a Reynor interview where he talks about that. I'd be really interested to hear. But for the most part, this is how Reynor plays. We got the Ling Bling Hydra going around the map. And it's kind of funny because Clem has to be thinking a lot about these lurkers, just because lurkers are so strong if you get them in the right places. Boom, boom, you know, on high grounds, very strong units to have. So I think he had to have been thinking about tanks this entire game. He's just kind of getting Widow Mines just in cases. Because going tanks into Widow Mines is a lot more doable than going Widow Mines into tanks. If you're going Widow Mines into tanks, you know, if you reactively go tanks after seeing a bunch of Hydras, you know, good luck having 1 or 2 tanks. But, you know, if you're going tanks and you see like a bunch of Ling Bling, sure, let's throw some Widow Mines in there. Because you're not really pumping out a lot of Widow Mines anyways. The only difference production would be like 2 to 3 with this double tech lab setup. So honestly, it's not the worst scenario, but it's not ideal. And that's kind of the stuff that Reynor forces in these kind of games. Not ideal situations, and makes everyone just a little bit uncomfortable. He's that uncle that everyone doesn't know what job he has. Everyone's just a little bit uncomfortable at the dinner table, but no one really wants to ask him what he does. You know what? That's fine. We'll just let you do your thing. You might be drunk, but that's okay. That's par for the course. That's fine. And even during this attack, 3 lurker drop, going up to 6 lurkers coming around here, just out of the sensor range. And he's going to be looking for this base for sure, and looks like he's going to be looking for this main base as he comes in. Lurkers on top of production are powerful. So Clem does have the units to defend this, but he just drops, goes out of the sensor range or the missile turret range, no problem. What's going on at home? We're chilling. We're pulling stuff with Vipers. There's no tanks in sight. We're pulling them all. His pushing power is slowed down dramatically, and we got SCVs killed. He's got to scan for annoying lurkers. It's not gonna happen. There's no way. Nothing's gonna happen here. He's gonna be going in the natural base. There's no turret. He made 1 turret in the main to be safe. Nothing in the natural. Super annoying. And while he did kill a lot of SCVs, the main thing is he killed all the momentum on this push. He was abducting lurkers, or tanks rather, the whole time, killing all of his pushing power. The tanks that were defending the tanks in front were now the only tanks, and we found ourselves completely deflated. There's nothing scary about this push at all. And he's not only does he have to remake SCVs, but he's actually just got to totally rely on the ghosts that he's making and the fact that he is pumping out more and more bases because he's got no timing. If he gets any timing from now on, it's not because he had any grand tech advantage or anything like that. It's just because he got way more raw units because, you know, some Widow Mine shot or some lucky situation happened. But now Reynor's in control. He's gotten past this little lip here. He's on the middle. He's got Lings at the bottom as well as the top defending the lurkers. He's got vision galore, and it's honestly like prime Reynor game to win. As he just pumps through. And he's got so much economy. He's got 90 drones. These don't need to be amazing fights. They just need to be good enough. Keep your lurkers if you can. Trade out the Ling Bling. Lurkers on a ramp. Forget about it. Then we're ready to go for round 2. It's just like that. A situation where most Zerg would be afraid. A split map Terran on Golden Wall. Reynor is absolutely thriving. Just going around the map, just picking and choosing, really, for the most part. This base looks good. Let's take it. No problem. Taking the ghosts. Good grabs all around. Clem knows about this southern base here, but He just doesn't have enough bio to justify a drop at this point. Ooh. I was wrong. He has exactly 1 medevac's worth to sacrifice. Because he can't pull out every single Marine. Because he's got to protect these ghosts. Oh no. Clem knows. We're going back to what I said originally. He doesn't have enough bio. Should have been double drop. He messed up. Reynor nuke. As it's going on, lurker dropping the main, lurker dropping the nat. He's just pulling them apart every way he can. And this is why lurkers are so good on Golden Wall, just because of how strong these tactics are. I don't think these are like necessary tactics to make lurkers work. They're just nice little bonuses. I think maybe lurker drop isn't something you should do every game, but you should be looking at the map and making decisions like, hey, lurkers are pretty good on a ramp. You should put it above or even below it, depending on what you're facing. Or, hey, there's this giant mineral line that he can't go through. I'm just gonna put lurkers down here. And honestly, isn't there a lot of new maps that have these lines of minerals? What is it? Is it Jagannatha? No. What is that map? It looks like Thunderburn, but it's not Thunderburn. It's a new one. I was just looking at it just the other day. Can't remember. Romanticide? That's definitely a real map. So I believe you. Romanticide. Yeah, I think it is Romanticide. Real purple. What's a good number of lurkers to make? I think having a good number of lurkers is like, I'd say like 6 or 8. What I see Reynor do a lot is he'll go about 6 or 8, and then any more than that, he'll split up into a different group. So you'll see a lot of times, and I'll mention this several times, how he's making different groups of Ling Bling, and he's kind of defending the 2 opposite ends or 2 weakest bases he has. He'll do that with lurkers too. Once he gets to lurker phase, he's splitting them up, keeping everything safe, because it's the same idea. You're trying to defend your weakest bases you possibly can. You're just doing it with better units, as well as they're attacking you with better units. So it just, it keeps going, and it just applies across the board. So it's pretty simple, pretty sick. We got Ice and Chrome. This is the 3rd game out of 4, whatever we're going to be looking at. I think all these games have something a little bit different, which I think is really nice. But they're also all similar enough that it just flows. Because the worst thing you could ever do when trying to learn about a matchup or a style is watching someone who does it, and then they'll do completely opposite things, completely opposite timings every game. Or it's like it kind of seems loosely the same, but they're getting there in completely different ways. Reynor gets there in a pretty similar way every time. Sometimes the gas will be a little bit later will be a little bit later, but the meat of it is all there. It's not really about the exact nitty-gritty, when is he getting his upgrades, when is he getting the lair. It's kind of like what's the spirit of what we're doing, what's the purpose of what we're doing, because we can play around that and we'll make the build way better. If you know why someone does a build, you'll play way better than just copying a build. In that case, that is especially true. Reynor just being safe, checking around with the drone. A lot of people I see will be like really anti-drone scout. I see some people really for drone scout. I don't think it really matters. I think it's important to consider these guys are in a tournament and they're playing versus some of the best players in the world in this case. So they're going to be keeping it safe, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep it safe on the ladder if you don't think that you have what it takes to beat a 2-raft or something like that off the cuff. Some people can, some people can't. And some people are willing to take that risk, and some people don't want to ever take that risk. So it is what it is. Don't think it should be too complicated. Just keep it super simple. This time, Reynor actually had a lot of trouble getting the creep out, and you'll notice, and this is a great tip for anybody who is in a situation where they only have 2 lings and a queen. If you have 2 lings between the Reaper and the Tumor, that's not going to stop a Reaper. Any good player is going to snipe that Tumor. Now, what you need is 4 lings between a Reaper and a Tumor. But because Reynor knows this, he's making this super far back, point where he can't even see this Tumor going down. So he's adapting to the situation, making the more passive Tumor. And while it is a lot further back, you don't really want to be sitting on a lot of energy. You kind of want to get these pumping, because the faster you make a Tumor, the quicker the spawn gets off cooldown and everything just starts rolling. Now Clem is no stranger to doing 2 Hellion run-bys. This guy will use all of his units. Very smartly sending the drones to the main ramp, so he doesn't have to worry about him cutting up to the main and then making this last forever. He cuts it short pretty quickly because of that. And overall, what did he even lose? He didn't lose anything. I think he just lost maybe a couple links. Overall, pretty good. And during this, I got a link scout. I think I think you should stick to whatever scouting pattern you have and keep it consistent. But I think a very important thing to note is if you do want to employ ling run-bys, ling scouts, whatever you want to call them, doing them versus a Hellion run-by is absolutely wonderful. Because at most, they'll have 2, maybe they'll have 4 if they have all their Hellions there, but you can kind of split them up and it's not so bad. If this was 6 Hellions and he was camping, there's no way. But because Reynor saw the 2 Hellions coming out as well as the 2 he just run by, it's almost a sure thing. And now he knows it's not 3cc. He sees all the depots up front. It's all figured out. Getting those spores down, getting the Evo down. Important thing to note about if you see someone going lib, you know that they're going lib for a fact. Evo before lair, totally safe. Don't even worry about it. Some people are lair before Evos for life, die hard. But if you know it's lib, you're completely fine. You can go ahead and get those upgrades going, and you'd be better off for it, to be honest. Just playing every advantage he can get. Super nice. And he's got all the links he needs. Getting a couple more. This would have been 8 Hellions if he didn't run by those 2. That's how much Clem's investing into this. He's putting tons of work into these Hellions and what he wants to get out of them. And I think that's a huge characteristic of Clem, and I know everybody has trouble versus these Hellion, super active Hellion players. I think you get a really good example of Reynor, splitting up in his 4th base. It's kind of ready for a move in at any moment, keeping them split up. It's got his queens covering the other sides. Just really nice. Always ready to hit him. And he's not messing around. He's got 24 links. Some people might skimp, but Reynor is totally down. Totally down to fight at all times. And he's just pumping just like everybody else. Gets a great 4th timing every time. You'll notice this is 6:30 and his 4th is almost done. This is the timing you want to be looking for in your games. If you want to see if you're hitting good benchmarks, look for the 4th timing. He doesn't even need banelings. He's got so many lings. He's not just now getting to the 70s. looks like he'll be hitting mid-70s. Super nice stuff. Because he's committing heavily on the ground to make sure he for sure doesn't get messed around. And he's taking all the liberties he can off of it. Taking a fifth, controlling creep in the middle, which will become a big deal throughout the game. Because just like any other map in ZvT, you have one pushing path that's the most important, and this happens to be right here. Going down. Every time you have enough lings and banelings to defend one place, you always want to rally them to a different place. This case being up here, weakest spot on the map. He's got a tower, but just in case if he goes all the way around, we got lings and banes being super safe. Always rallying to a different spot. He's got more than enough to deal with this medevac drop. He's just worried about the second one. Super fundamental stuff. And even though it's not a drop there, it's a creep clearing push up here, and these are the first to respond. You're super close by, and he doesn't have to worry about any multi-prongs. He's ready for both of them, like super ready for both of them too, not just like a little bit. He's actually willing to fight. At the same time, if he fought with the other army at the same time, he'd have an army that would be great versus both. And just now, without us even realizing it, at 8:30, once again, Clem for the first time is seeing hydras. He would have had no indication that this was hydras up until right now. We're making the tank, we're making the tech lab, and wait, did you see that? This was a reactor before. He had no idea. He was ready to go widow mine, drilling claws, the whole shebang, because he genuinely thought that he was just playing Ling Bling. He didn't know. There was no reason for him to know. The only way he could have known is how, he saw the hydras. That's a great way. Literally seeing the den in the back here would have been another way. But it's just not reliable, especially at this level, to find stuff like that. So as soon as he sees it, cancels. Huge switch over. All reactively. 100% reactive. He did not metagame Reynor. Oh, I think he's going to go lurkers. He couldn't. Reynor's been switching it up all series. You'll see in both series he switches up Ling Bling and Hydra. And then going Hydra Lurker all the time. There's just no way. There's no way. And that's what makes this style so interesting, is that he switches up lurkers and just pure Ling Bling so much. And with Terran having to go, like ideally wanting to go Widow Mines versus Ling Bling, and then ideally going tanks versus lurkers, it just screws everything up. You know, every game you'll pretty much see Terran starting off with tanks, but you really don't want to continue those tanks versus pure Ling Bling, and it's a super scary situation for Terran if they are in the dark for that long. That could make your 2-2 timing just completely forfeit if you don't know exactly what's happening. Super suspect. And Reynor's controlling space really well. Notice how he takes the towers. Towers are ridiculously strong, which is why a lot of people actually don't like towers that much. Because once you have a tower, you have the corners, but everything relating to those, relating to the tower. So right now he knows for a fact he's not top or bottom. He's actually seeing a little bit with his vision right now. And he's going for a mid push, all thanks to that tower on the bottom side. And he doesn't have lurkers ready. He doesn't actually need lurkers for a 2-2 timing. Hydra Ling Bling is actually wonderful on its own. So he can just kind of wait, stall for as long as he can, getting out the Vipers, which are great with lurkers. They're kind of just a nice thing to add on in general, but he can just chill and This ramp is completely in control of reynor right now. This is why having the creep down is so important, because if there wasn't creep, if the creep was here in the beginning, Clem would have started here, and he'd already be pushing this 4th base. But we're starting from the bottom of the ramp. He's keeping a group of lings just in case at the top side too, protecting this, and also looking for flanks potentially, setting up stuff. Clem though, super on top of it, sees everything because he's under the center tower, but just waiting, just in case. Just super patient as he gets his lurker upgrades. He's kind of holding on for vipers and stuff like that because he totally can. There's no rush right now. Ducks every single tank and then walks away. Every single tank. What just happened? The lings were up here. He sees the Marines up top. Vipers are now coming into the game. Marines up top. He executes Order 66 on the bottom. There's a bunch of Marines up here. And this army is looking real small versus this next Ling Bling Hydra Viper push. And he just cleans it up with 3 abducts. Super conservative play. Like, I think people would peg reynor as like the super aggro player that would just always like maybe even into stuff, but super conservative. Didn't even go that hard. He's covering his bases. He's expanding up top. He's getting his lurkers down the bottom. And now he's got lurker and the vipers with the energy. Like, it's crazy. And the +1 on the missile. Super good stuff. Super strong. And now he's just controlling space. If you can control the top and bottom avenues on maps like Ice and Chrome, Eternal Empires is like left and right, but it's the same idea. You control so much in ZvT. And he's creeping down the middle. He's got the top and bottom. He's just trying to figure out where Clem's going, and he's totally down to meet him anywhere he wants. Because this is his timing. 3-3 on the way. He's getting all the lurker upgrades. He's getting cracklings. This is peak lurkers if you ever seen it. As he's coming in with the flank. And it does trade out almost always. But he's riding off of 90 drones every single game when he's doing this. This is by no means a low economy game, because when he's establishing these bases at the top and bottom, he's establishing future economy as well as current economy to just keep on pumping. That's what's so important about getting to this point, is that he's splitting up his top and bottom so well with his Ling Bling and his hydras and then into lurkers that he doesn't actually need mutas. He's already there. Every single time a fight happens or a drop starts, he's already in position for the drop. And then poor Clem, he didn't have a scan. And then it's pretty much a cleanup from here. It's just absolutely brutal. See, you have Vipers. Got Vipers behind too. Absolutely brutal. Just smashing Ling Bling in. And he's just banking the whole time. Absolutely brutal. Okay, wait, restart what I was talking about. This game starts very similar with defending with lings and queens and defending the weak points and stuff like that and just zoning as much as he can. But he goes into a very different composition through the mid game. And it all kind of, the beautiful thing about watching a pro player play is not just what their strategies are, but how their strategies mesh with each other. Reynor in particular is very intelligent with the builds he chooses because they all look the same. But they all achieve very different things, and they all invoke very different responses from the opponent. If I'm going lurkers, you gotta make tanks. If I'm just going ling bling, you better be making winnow mines. Now, what if we didn't go lurkers or just ling bling? What if we went roaches? That's exactly what you see in this game. Even though it is very similar looking in the beginning, he's defending with queens, he even has a lot of lings to support those. He ends up getting into a completely different composition and throws Clem through a loop. Now you can kind of see little stuff like him waiting, kind of hid the drone around for a little while until he saw the Reaper go in the net. Then he went out to the third. If there was an SCV there, he would have A-moved it and he would have made it very difficult on Clem. This game, Clem made a really intelligent decision by scouting out with the Marine outside his base because Reynor was looking for proxy racks positions with his first and second Overlord. You can kind of see that in the fog of war here. You can see this line. Actually, wait, no, I don't think it's... I think it is this line. And he gets completely cut out of position. So it's a pretty unique situation with this map where proxy racks are pretty popular. And he just made the right call. So what is Reynor going to do without any Overlord? He has absolutely no way of scouting this through conventional means. Just gets the lings. These are just the first couple lings that were fighting the Reaper. And we got more lings home just in case of any run by. But it's completely fine. Boom. We know it's not 3CC. We see the Hellions. What's that Hellion timing? Those are 7th and 8th Hellions. That's a lot of Hellions. So we know shenanigans are happening. We can kind of guess it's a lib just based off the fact that it's Clem and he's been doing a lot of lib. But we're playing pretty safe here. We're getting 3 spores. It's okay if they're a little bit out of position. We can move them. It happens to be right. So that's great. Good stuff. Oh, since we know it's lib now, confirmed lib at the third base, we can go double Evo and we're completely fine. We don't have to worry about Banshees. We don't have to worry about a really fast medevac timing. We just have to worry about Hellions and libs. And that's the thing. If you just have Hellions and libs, and especially a lot of Hellions, where you know that there isn't going to be a really fast Marine medevac timing, then going upgrades first is no problem. So what's the biggest problem we have if we're going straight into medevacs? What do we want? We want Baneling speed. But no worries about Baneling speed this game. Especially because we're going roaches. This whole game, Clem's seeing lings and queens. He's not seeing just a couple lings either. He's seeing a lot of lings. In fact, I think he just made a couple more. And you would not think from Clem's point of view that this is anything but ling bling. He's seeing double Evo. He's seeing lings defending everything, but somehow there's a roach war in the funniest place too, which is directly related to this lib being back here. Like probably the best place would be like here, but just because this lib's out in this corner, then in a weird way this actually ends up being the sneakiest spot. And he's not banking ridiculously hard on hiding this, but there is an advantage to this, and he's definitely playing into that really well. He knows what he can get away with if this goes unscouted, and he's totally prepared to take advantage of that. Who in their right mind as a Terran player would think that I'm playing versus roaches right now? There's no way. There's absolutely no way. And what is Clem doing over here? He's making winnow mines. He's just chilling. He's getting his second factory. No doubt he'll get a tech lab on that. But for drilling claws, he's not worried about roaches Until, bum bum bum. Roach Warren scouted, 720. There's not really much you can do at this point, to be honest. It's pretty tough. Getting a tank out now, what would happen if you got out of tank right now? You might have a tank or two by the timing. So he's not even bothering, he's going straight into medevacs, and he's just trying to make the best out of what he's got. But it's not that good, to be honest. It's a really tough hold, because this much Roach Ravager with +1/+1, I mean, reynor even lost his 4th base, but it doesn't even matter, because this timing is so strong just based off the fact that he didn't even know that he was getting attacked until just now. Biles on the Widow Mines, just like clockwork, and then just like that, he just died. All because he went a super Ling heavy start and then went into Roaches and Ravagers and did a huge timing. Super simple stuff that makes like really big difference in play. Really big differences. I think if I was ever gonna give like a moral of the story on like what reynor's about, it's about tricking people into thinking he's doing certain things and then coming out with different tech, whether it's lurkers, mutas, roaches, or actually just being Ling Bling. He's keeping his opponents super honest. At no point can they make a risk, and if they do, they're gonna have to suffer the consequences, for sure. 9-minute timing is late, no? Yeah, it is pretty late. But the thing is, it's not a super tight timing, but it doesn't have to be a super tight timing. The thing about a Roach timing is that if the other person has no idea it's happening, it doesn't actually have to be like super slick. I think the earliest Ravager timing reynor could do is like 8 minutes if he went across right away and just completely ignored everything, just by virtue of the way he does his build. So it's like it's a sacrifice, because if you think about what a normal 1-1 Roach timing is, it's like 1-1 at 7 minutes, and you're pretty much pushing at 7 minutes if you're on point. But reynor chooses to go Lings and builds up the Ling count initially, and then kind of uses it as a trick. And even if it doesn't work, it's totally fine. You can just transition out. It's a 1-1 timing, but like if you have that 4th up and you're not getting harassed so much, you know, it's no big deal. You can go pit, Bailey Nest, transition out. And I think part of why reynor does the way he does is because he just doesn't like defending with roaches. But I think it ends up being kind of, I think defending with Ling Bling is kind of reynor's defining factor. It's kind of funny that he always will defend with the same units and then just go into completely different stuff. I don't know if what came first, the chicken or the egg, but the result is a really cool style from reynor and ZvT. And I know a lot of people will look at reynor's style and they'll be like, man, he's just going lurkers and he's winning. You know, it's super cool. Maybe I should try it. But no one's really paying attention to how he's going lurkers and why he's going lurkers. And they might not even realize that it's actually kind of a mix-up to the usual Ling Bling. And there's even tanks in there and you know, stuff like that. Because you'll see the game 1, we saw, even though Clem scouted that he was versus Hydras, he kept on the Widow Mines because he actually just couldn't transition at that point. Well, you know, that ends up being a macro game, but if it's versus roaches, you're just dead. You're done. So, super nice games out of reynor. A lot of people were telling me to watch reynor versus Trap, reynor versus Serral. I probably will look at these. I know I want to do these kind of reviews on different series, different players' styles specifically. I might do this again where I have like one player in particular doing a bunch of different, you know, I'll just say like reynor doing ZvPs. It doesn't have to be versus trap. Just in general, like the idea of taking a person's style and like really cracking it, I think is a cool concept. So I want to do that more with these EPT games or DreamHack Masters, whatever the hell people call these things these days. I can't keep track. I say EPT, then I see everyone say DreamHack Masters. I don't know what the difference is. But yeah, definitely. If you have a particular series in mind, I think someone said something about stats earlier. I kind of caught a glimpse of. Let me know. I have a Discord. If you have specific suggestions of a person or a series, let me know in there for sure. As well as YouTube. If you missed any of this, I will be uploading all this stuff to YouTube, as I can just keep everything immortalized in there. Yeah.